What industry do you hope won't exist in 10 years? Story 1. Pharmacy Benefit Managers, PBMs. Look them up. They're basically blood-sucking middlemen that sit between hospitals and health insurers. Supposedly created to control prescription drug costs and manage formularies, but they actually drive prices up. One of the many terrible causes of high medical costs in the States. It's not the PBMs alone that drive up the price, it's the combination of every single company in the supply chain. PBMs are often easily blamed by the other companies to hide their own drug price inflation because it's easy to blame a negotiator and call them a middleman. Don't get me wrong, I agree with you that PBMs are terrible too, but wouldn't it just be better if medical insurance went away? Or even better, eliminating the industry of corporate lobbying that prevents the government from going after the medical industry? As someone who works on these topics, here are my opinions. Number 1, the complexity itself is a big part of the problem. Number 2, small reforms are hard, usually because of money. Even big reforms like Obamacare were a mess, mainly because of money. Number 3, if you want good reforms, look for an entire foreign system to copy. Find one adapted to the way the US currently works. Number 4, it will work better if most decision makers in medicine are very afraid that keeping the current system is going to cost them money. For example, imagine a patient strike where everything elective is delayed, or some alternative non-governmental way of delivering services grows fast, or there are big successful lawsuits. One of the wild cards is something medicine does not see coming. The biggest effects would not be for a single condition, but broad groups. As someone who's been told you have very good health insurance, the complexity is actually huge. I went to the mountains in June, came down with a cough, I couldn't cough anything up. Local doctor said it's HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema, which according to him can happen randomly to anyone going high altitude. He said this in response to me saying I've been there many times. So he warns me that if I don't get back down to altitude soon, it'll become pneumonia. I got back to my town about 4 hours away, and it still became pneumonia. I check into the ER, barely able to breathe. I was exhausted just walking to the front door. After a 2.5-day stay, my bill was like $30,000. I had an out-of-pocket cost of $5.8K, and insurance got the rest. When I took out a small personal loan to cover these costs, I had to pay like 20 different providers for my treatment. It was insane. The hospital isn't just a one-size-fits-all bill. Everyone within the hospital is billed separately, and just going through my statements and finding who needed to get what payment was a small headache. But I did it. I really want to see the industry reformed. But if that's how things work right now, I have no idea where to begin with rolling out such changes. Story 2. I found a mommy influencer who was making monetized content off a newborn she was fostering. I was so disgusted and was happy to hear that reunification with the birth mother happened, only to find out that the influencer was still making monetized content about the foster baby even after she no longer had the child. In the podcast I referenced, they talked about a woman who wanted to adopt a baby from Hong Kong, if I recall correctly, and they told her she couldn't post his face online for the first year during the adoption process. So she stopped pursuing the adoption. People like her are the very reason these countries have to make these policies for U.S. adoptions. They know people do it just for clout. They also talked about another woman who adopted a Chinese baby who ended up being too difficult, so she rehomed him when he was 3. That was even the language she used, and she didn't confess until her entire fan base was demanding to know where the kid was because all of a sudden she just pretended like he never existed. The name of the woman who adopted the baby from China was Micah Stauffer, a YouTuber. She placed her autistic son from China, Huxley, with a new family in 2020, but only after making monetized content off of him for more than 3 years. As an autistic adult, one of the biggest and most alarming issues I see with the whole autism community, which is made up largely of autism moms, not autistic community, because that's made up of autistic people, is the widespread rampant exploitation of autistic children for monetized or attention purposes. My own mother tried to become one such autism mommy vlogger when I got diagnosed with autism in high school around age 16. She didn't even disclose to me that she had even made a blog about having a child with autism until I came home from a horrible prom night when I was 17, crying due to feeling ostracized, and the first thing she said was, "I'm so sorry, honey. Look, I posted about your awful prom on my blog." The blog post she showed me proceeded to talk about how she was the victim and how she felt terrible simply because she was the mom of a child with autism, and the experience of having a normal child had been robbed from her by autism. Story 3. I work for a psychiatric hospital in HIM. That doesn't pull any TTI nonsense. Should be the standard, but we don't even use any form of mechanical restraints. Whenever we get contacted by a TTI facility, it's always a whole aggravating ordeal. Once we got a call from one nearly 1,000 miles away because they lost a kid. Apparently, this particular wilderness facility does their own investigations internally, even if a kid goes missing. The thing is, when they call, it's never obvious they're calling from a facility because they're so bad at doing anything. They can't send proper ROIs, and so it drags on because we have to figure out what the hell they sent us and why. Even the notorious Provo Canyon, which is still open, is beyond me. Whenever any of my coworkers picks the phone up from them, they have to put them on hold to gather their thoughts of what the hell. And every time after looking at the caller ID and asking who's on the phone, I say, yes, that's a facility. They don't have staff, they have a goon squad. I've gone on so many tangents of how horrible these places are, and somehow before I explained it to them, my coworkers had no clue, despite the red flags that are raised every time we are contacted by them. Sadly, it should be the standard rather than an achievement. I grew up in a different state. I was so close to being sent to a residential. Interestingly enough, according to medical records I got a hold of, it was due to my autism diagnosis. I spent a lot of my time in psychiatric wards, most of my teenage years. They were good at convincing me and my mom I'd never really get out or that I was a lost cause. I was lucky to not experience residential, but the wards inflicted a lot of physical and emotional scars nonetheless. The differences between the hospitals I was placed in and the one I work in are like night and day. What I experienced would not fly where I work. We'd be in deep doo-doo. My department is not big, only 3 people, so when something is even suspected to be amiss, we all have to put in serious overtime to help with investigation. Not as in do the entire investigations. Completely internal investigations are obviously not good, so that's a whole lot of other teams, like accrediting agencies and the state, but just make sure everything is prepared on our side. I really wish ethical practice was more common. Story 4. 24-hour propaganda media outlets masquerading as news. An excerpt from a satire podcast called Caicos Industries, Do Evil Better. A client of Caicos Industries came to us with an idea. They said they wanted to make a cable news channel. We politely replied that such a thing already exists. But wait, they said, we want to make a cable news channel that is truly evil. Our interest was piqued. They said, we want to make a news network that intentionally misleads its viewers. We told them that such a thing already exists. They said, no, not like that. We want a network that claims to be impartial, but instead hides its agendas inside of its headlines. We told them that this already exists. They said, no, you're really not getting it. We want to make something so evil that it spends all of its time digging into celebrity news and fake outrage with pundits who aren't remotely qualified while ignoring important world events. It will keep the people completely uninformed. We told them that such a thing already exists. No, they said, turning blue in the face. We want to make something so evil that it will actively make its viewers angry to feed into their addiction to emotional stimuli. It will actually teach them that anger is the correct response. We sighed heavily and informed them that such a thing does already exist. They began to sweat profusely. You still don't get it. It will masquerade as a source of information, but it will only provide people with a range of various emotions that will keep them hooked enough to sit through all of the commercials. And it will have commercials, showing for certain that there are places they won't go because their paychecks depend on them not doing so. We began to feel sorry for this client of ours, and we said, okay, we'll look into it. Story 5. Fast fashion. It's terrible for the environment. Fashion accounts for 20 to 35% of the microplastic that ends up in the ocean. Terrible for the workers. 93% aren't paid a living wage. Child labor and bonded labor are not uncommon, and many of the factories are unsafe. I could keep going, and the fricker of it is, and people often don't even wear the clothes. They buy them and then bin them, or wear them once and they donate them. Around 90% of those clothes end up in a textile waste mill. It's recycled, sure, but a better solution would have it never having existed in the first place. And if you send the clothing abroad, your good intentions are crippling local markets. And the clothes aren't donated by Oxfam at all. They are sold to local textile traders who sell our old rubbish to a community who have no alternative. The textile mills all closed when our clothes showed up en masse. I have an ambition. When and if I get off the extreme ill health childbearing merry-go-round, at the moment I wear a lot of old pajamas, I'm not buying any clothes at all. I'm going to find a tailor and have to have a small wardrobe of clothes that I really like and fit me perfectly made. And then I will enjoy them. I will wear them until I die. I know a lot of people aren't in a position to do that. Fast fashion is associated with profligate purchasing of cheap clothes, and that is very much a thing. Shopping hauls are so hard to watch. But fast fashion also exists because people who don't have a lot of money need clothes to go to work, and deserve to feel stylish and attractive too. And I don't have an answer for that aspect of this issue, or how to support the garment workers, who are all being paid frick all. But frick all is slightly better than nothing. These are things we're going to have to address at some point anyway, because the current model is not sustainable. Might as well find solutions now. Here in Scandinavia, a lot of brands are starting to push into this. For example, refusing to take part in Black Friday, creating reselling areas and stores for their products, pricing according to costs, manufacturing in Europe, not Asia, and creating very small drops. There's also the repair cafe economy taking off, where they'll encourage you to get your clothing fixed rather than throw it away. It's possible, but it requires a mind shift to clothing should cost more, we should buy less, and sales aren't actually all that great for brands. Story 6. Telemarketers. I think it's funny that we already have telemarketing robots called call screening robots. Personally, I just use Tasker to auto-drop any call from a number that isn't in my contacts. The problem I have is that all of the telemarketing calls I get, either from bots or from real people, are calling me using phone numbers spoofed from my contacts list. I can't refuse to answer a call from my daughter, but I'm really ticked off when it's not my daughter calling, but some scammer using my daughter's phone number. Everyone always wants a better phone, but people never complain enough about this. I can't believe the phone part of phones is by far the worst part of the experience. The fact there is a way to spoof numbers so easily in 2023 is a monumental failure of the telephone system. Having formerly worked for both Verizon and AT&T, I can assure you that this isn't a failure of those companies, it's a boost to their profit. They're paid by the telemarketers to help telemarketers spoof numbers. It's really easy to do this in 2023 when the entire telecommunications industry is responsible for the spoofing in the first place. Story 7. Real telemarketing died shortly after the federal Do Not Call list. There's a reason you aren't getting phone calls from Macy's or the local furniture store or insurance companies anymore. What you're getting are scam calls. Specifically, scam warfare from places like India that extracted $5.8 billion from the pockets of Americans last year. And not just any Americans, usually the most infirm, elderly, disabled, kind, dumb, or otherwise compromised Americans. When I first enrolled in the Do Not Call list, I thought this would help. Got a spam call a while later and told the lady that I was on the Do Not Call list, and she straight up said, "I don't care," and went on with her pitch. At this point, if you have the time, you take up all their time if they are live and not a bot. Make them waste their time on you of someone that might be taken in by their ruse. More than a few YouTubers have made it their job to mess with these guys. Yep, last time Microsoft called me, it was 30 minutes of them getting angrier, trying to explain the difference between my computer and monitor to me. My wife had to end the call because she got tired of my stupidity, or it'd have been going on for a lot longer. Look, Witch, I work in IT. I know exactly how to push your buttons all day. I'll just repeat what my customers tell me. It's cathartic to dump that on a scammer. Story 8. The Troubled Teen Industry. Look up the next post video on Ellen's school and you'll see what I mean. Abusing minors for money shouldn't be an industry. Didn't realize this would get so much traction. If you're interested in helping advocate against TTE, head over to r/troubled teens and join our little crew. As a former student or prisoner, I could not second this enough. The facility I was sent to got shut down a number of years ago, but there are still many other thriving programs. Some of the girls who also went there are now working on a documentary to shed some light on how counterproductive and downright criminal these places are. One of the facilities I went to recently was shut down because of a class action lawsuit. I'm very proud, to be honest. Screw those creepy groomers who drove us to the middle of nowhere and told us we were worthless and nobody would value us, and then drove us back and pretended like nothing happened to the other staff or therapists. I'm so glad I get to speak whenever I want now and eat food or drink water whenever I want. That was definitely beyond insane. Another place, I think they had 4 places, and they're all closed now. My therapist, who got his PhD writing about his inhumane treatment of us from the University of Utah, was named in the suit and was one of the owners. His name is like a beverage or a seasoning. Looked a lot like Rick Scott, too. For over 2 years, that man held my life in his hands. Story 9. U.S. Tax Prep. Unnecessary middleman with artificially maintained necessity due to lobbying bribery. Edit. I understand that many people have a reason to use professional tax services. In fact, I'm one of them. Surprise! Most people don't need this, though. There should be a better alternative for the average taxpayer, especially considering how confusing and fluid the government system is. As a tax preparer, I partly agree. There is absolutely no reason for an individual who works a job and receives wage income needs to file a tax return in the computer age. Employers should be able to withhold the correct amount and everything is done. It would save the IRS paper and man hours and a lot of people a lot of frustration. It's done by plenty of other countries. People with rental income, self-employment income, and similar would still need to file a return. Story 10. Mommy and family vloggers. They're sinister. A podcast I listened to did a 7-star the episode deep dive, and it was horrifying. There needs to be laws to protect these exploited children, and in 10 to 20 years, we're going to see a lot of these kids telling their horror stories and suing their parents. Edit to add, the podcast is called Someplace Underneath. It's episodes 56 through 62. The horrible thing is that for every cringy family vlog with 1 million subscribers, there are 100 failed attempts with parents that are probably doing even more damage to their children. Exactly. This is what is truly terrifying to me. There's thousands of unknowns who have put their kids through hell to try to get attention, likes, etc. I actually have one particular mommy in mind that I've seen do this, and she continues to fail. But she just tries harder the next time, hurting her children more in the process. It makes my stomach turn. We should come together and get laws passed. Story 11. Everything as a subscription. As a tech worker, I understand why this is so popular, but God, do I hate it. Some subscriptions can genuinely offer amazing value to consumers. My problem is the mass adoption of subscriptions on products and services that have no business being a subscription. Those that exist solely so companies can make more money off of you. Not everything should be a subscription. Right? I freaking despise it. Even something silly as a bad coloring app wants a $9 monthly subscription. That's Disney Plus with ads, mofos. Don't forget to create an account with us so we can sell, so you can save your work. Literally everything. Story 12. It will only get worse. Everything will be on a subscription basis. I literally read an article last month from a very well-known consulting firm titled The Future of XaaS, Everything as a Service, XaaS. Seriously, it has gone on long enough. It has to stop. I worked at a place that sold hardware. Buy it once, use it forever. One of the genius board members thought it was a good idea to cut the cost of the device in half, still with a 400% markup, and sell a yearly subscription. The sales dropped from $85 million in 1 year to $30 the next. The genius D-bag board member moved on to another company, and I'm sure he got a raise. Meanwhile, 200 people lost their jobs. It's such a scam. Story 13. The Concert Ticket Mafia. Ticketmaster, StubHub, Live Nation. Screw them. I know those entities aren't really an entire industry. They basically have the market monopolized, though. No crap. A few years ago, I wanted to get Garth Brooks tickets. The venue had this system set up to keep scalpers, aka Ticketmasters, from grabbing a bunch of tickets. I logged into the website at the exact time the website said and had to keep hitting refresh for a freaking hour and a half. By the time I could get in, there was one ticket left. One. Then guess who started advertising tickets? Yup, freaking Ticketmasters. Screw them. Story 14. Third-party student loan consultants. I used to work as a federal student loan collector for a Department of Education contractor. I have horror stories about borrowers who were purposefully deceived by these people, the worst of whom was someone who thought a consolidation she paid for completely eliminated her obligation. What these legally gray buttholes do is trick people into paying to have free paperwork done on their behalf. Sure, they have the tiny fine print disclosures, but they're extremely predatory and make me sick. In my opinion, getting rid of them could be legislation worthy, given that they interfere with federally owned debts. Story 15. Multi-level marketing schemes or pyramid schemes. The amount of Facebook posts I see that are like, join my book exchange, send 6 books, get 36 back. Variations include wine bottles, kids' toys, etc. Tells me pyramid schemes are not going anywhere, because people are not smart enough to realize these are literally the definition of a pyramid scheme. That's why I have this fantastic new idea for a business model. The inverted funnel plan. Instead of your money funneling down into some fat cat's new yacht fund, you flip it around and start funneling money to you. And the best part is, the more people you hire, the wider your funnel. Story 16. I don't know if this falls into the right category, but everything needs Wi-Fi. I bought a scale the other day that needed Wi-Fi before it could read my weight. I have a PS5 with all the media apps I need. Give me the option for a dumb TV. My washer, dryer, fridge, and oven should not also need Wi-Fi to be able to do basic operations. Samsung as a company is driving me up the freaking wall lately. Walmart sells dumb 4K TVs. Mine was like $140 for 60 or so inches. Story 17. Scam call centers. They'll be replaced by AI scam call centers. Oh my god, I never thought of this. But you're right. Imagine how many calls they could make from a server farm when you don't have to have actual people slowing things down. And to make matters worse, it learns what works and what doesn't. So over time, it will only get better and more deceitful. Story 18. Puppy and kitten farms. This and even pet stores that actually sell animals from these mills. My home state of Maryland is the second, behind California, in banning pet stores from selling animals from puppy and kitten mills. Munchkins and pugs and all other genetic abominations because they're cute. Story 19. Child modeling and anything to do with children being publicized on social media. Story 20. The frickers that make college textbooks $2,000. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.